Today in our show, we talk about Stage 9 fan production for Star Trek being shut down. The Dark Phoenix trailer has dropped, and so much more. So hang on to your capes, people, because guess what? You just joined Super Geeks. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Super Geeks Season 2, Episode 9. Joining me today, as always, is my friend Carlos Pedraza. How are you doing today, Carlos?
I'm doing great. Always glad to be back.
Great. I'm your host, George, as usual. And Carlos, where can people find you? What's your geek cred that we usually ask you?
I'm most easily found at aximonitor.com and the Aximonitor Facebook group.
Awesome. So, looks like it's just going to be me and Carlos tonight unless someone pops in late, but that's okay because there's plenty to talk about. The first thing I want to before I get into this, I just want to quickly mention I like to, because we've been doing this as kind of a habit lately, talking about new shows we've been watching. And did you ever used to watch Mad Men?
I did indeed.
I've heard it was good. I kept hearing about it over the years. I didn't realize how old it was, but started in 2006, I think, and it went for 7 seasons. But yeah, I'm almost done with the first season. I started watching it the other day. Really interesting show. I like it a lot. The characters are really realistic, and it kind of gives me a little bit of an Ally McBeal vibe, but not unrealistically. It's sort of the way the Office mentality is, and the way they all go after work to the bar or wherever. It just sort of kind of has that feel. But I like the realism, the authenticity of the '60s era. They really went into a lot of details, I can tell, to try to show the sentiment, the little things going on, and I guess they got awards for that, right? For the details of that era.
Oh, yeah, they got boatloads of Emmys.
I personally get grossed out when it comes to smoking. I've never been a smoker, but seeing them smoke constantly is like, ugh. Reminded me when I was little in the '70s and my parents would chain smoke.
It used to be like that all over. I think the funniest part of Mad Men was how often you saw like pregnant women smoking and drinking.
I still see that here in my building that I'm living in, unfortunately.
Well, but most places though, like
they didn't know.
People are publicly shamed if they try to do that. And it's just so weird to see it happening like so rampantly in a show set in the '60s.
Well, that's the thing. They didn't know. In fact, in the first episode, that's the whole point was they're only just starting to get that information about cancer out there and the health problems. They weren't like, it wasn't really in the public consciousness yet. It was getting there, and so even today, people they don't care sometimes. But back then, everybody could smoke everywhere. I mean, you could smoke in a restaurant, you could smoke in church, you could smoke. I don't know about church, but you could smoke
on planes.
Yeah. And in the homes, and nobody cared. I grew up in a home where my grandmother, my mother, and my father would smoke everywhere, and I was like, ugh. In some ways, that's why I never ended up smoking, ironically, because it just grossed me out. It was constantly all around me. And so I guess they smoke herbal, from what I read. Or they made the cast so that they don't have to actually smoke. They're smoking herbal ones, so that because if they smoke constantly, the nicotine ones and the tobacco ones, they would get all edgy and nervous. And they said they've seen that happen before with some shows where they actually make them smoke.
Oh yeah, that's happened. Some actors have even gotten addicted to cigarettes from playing a character who smokes.
I always thought they used prop cigarettes anyways in most films and TV shows, unless the actors didn't have a problem with it to make it look real. I don't know. But
Well, the thing is that the herbal ones apparently taste horribly. Taste horrible.
oh, really? That must explain the looks
Yeah,
of the winces on their face when they're doing it.
yeah, probably.
But yeah, like seeing everybody smoke everywhere, not worrying about it. The general sexist attitudes that are have obviously, this is like the year, I'm still in the year 1960 on the show, and they hadn't even gotten into the women's lib and things like that yet. So it was just heading in there, but right, it was still very sexist, misogynist. Just and even in the 70s, like I said, when I was growing up, a lot of those sentiments and the way people were acting all around were the way they are showing the show. So it just, to me, it's like a wow, it's like a it's really, because when you watch shows like that 70s show, which is a comedy, even though everybody was smoking back then, some networks don't want to promote people to smoke. So even though it's a historical authenticity thing, they're not going to have the actors all smoking all the time, and stuff like that. And this show was going for the authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, I think the smoking was definitely part of the point they were trying to make in looking at how advertising shapes society and reflects society. So and the very casual sexism that used to persist. I mean, it shows you a lot, like within the span of my life, for the role of women in society changing so drastically, within one lifetime, is actually a pretty remarkable achievement. And even though you still encountered a lot of those attitudes in the 70s, the attitudes had started to change. It was recognized as not a great way to treat women, even when people were still doing it, as opposed to in the 60s when it was just casually done, and that was just the way things were. So, I mean, if you chart out the progress, and certainly there's still progress to be made, you can see it. It's pretty striking, and I think that's one of the reasons why the show resonated so much with audiences, was because for a lot of people, the 60s were not that long ago, and to see such a change in some of the mores of society was a big deal.
Yep, and also that neighbor that gets shunned because she's a divorcee. It reminded me of that Happy Days episode where Richie Ritchie dated the divorcee, and they made a big deal about it. Like, she's a divorcee, and that was in the 50s. But it reminded me of that because if you're a woman back then in a urban area like that, where people were kind of middle class or a little higher than middle class. And the gossip, all the gossip wives, and then, oh, she's a divorcee, and then what's she doing? And everybody basically slut shaming her for just being single. It's crazy, but that's the way it was. It's sometimes still like that, but especially in the 60s and the 70s, yeah, in the 50s, obviously. But yeah, the show is interesting. I mean, the characters are really well written, and at first I hated that young exec guy, Paul. But then over the course of the first season, I ended up thinking he's kind of fascinating to me. He's kind of like a Wesley Crusher if he went into advertising, in a way. But of course more sexist. But yeah, so it's a good show. I'm looking forward to seeing where. I mean, I don't know real spoilers, but I do know a lot of things are going to be happening over 7 seasons, I'm sure. So we'll see. What about you? You've been watching anything new?
In the past week, I don't think so. I've been pretty busy with some other projects, so
Okay.
so nothing new yet. I started watching. Oh yes, there was something new. I started watching that new show on NBC called Manifest, about the plane load of people who depart from Jamaica, and
right
when they
land,
they have
they
on the flight they go run into this turbulence, and then when they come out of the turbulence and head into New York to land, it's 5.5 years later, and it's so far it's really fascinating.
Doesn't that sound a lot like that plot for that show? What was it, the 4800? And then they disappeared and they were abducted. But I mean, I don't know. Does it even imply that it was an alien abduction, or is it a total mystery?
It's a total mystery at this point.
So they could have.
I'm guessing it's not going to be. It's not going to be alien. It's just the show is sort of too realistically grounded, I think, for them to spin off into
So it could have been anything.
alien
Could have been
territory.
they could have gone through a wormhole from a government experiment. The plane might have flown through it. They could have been captured by the government, experimented on, and their memories were erased.
Honestly, I think we'll probably either never find out or find out very late in depending, how many seasons it survives. But because it's almost immaterial, like the why of it, because what they're really examining is, what do you do when you have to pick up a life 5.5 years later and everyone thought you're dead. And
what you just said reminded me of like how everybody was saying that the point of The Walking Dead is not to ever answer the question of exactly what caused the outbreak, because if you do, it takes, because the survivors not knowing is part of what makes it dramatic. Is they can get clues and there could be theories, but if you actually definitively answer it, it takes something away. And I can kind of agree with that. So I can see that. I can see your point. That's well, who knows? Unless they really had it as a concrete plot point. But it sounds interesting. I might try and check it out. All right. And first thing I wanted to talk about today was we only talked about this a little bit before, but as we get closer and closer to launch, and I guess you can watch the first episode for free, which I'll do. DC Universe's streaming service, of course, using Titans as their flagship show, just like Star Trek Discovery's CBS All Access's flagship show. But they have started showing more scenes and clips from things you didn't get to see in the original trailer, such as Beast Boy transforming. You got to see what they're doing with that, and also introducing, I guess, this Jason Todd version of Robin meeting. You're the new Robin. He lets you drive the Batmobile. I thought that was kind of funny. I thought at first it was going to be not the Jason Todd one, but maybe someone like Damien or what's the other guy's name? Tim Drake.
Gosh, Tim Drake.
But I guess from what I'm hearing, this may lead to him becoming Red Robin, or sorry, what's his face?
Red Hood.
Red Hood, that's the one. But anyways, from these new scenes and clips we're seeing of Titans between Beast Boy and Jason Todd, what do you think? Is it more making you want to see it than the original trailer did?
I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, me too.
I've always been a Teen Titans fan, or Titans, as you were, since I was a little kid. So I definitely want to check it out. I like that they're, trying to be edgy. I hope they don't go overboard in that, but we'll see. I am still not sure about Starfire. I don't think that the look they quite sell the look.
Well, they keep claiming that's a party dress and not her actual costume. But the thing is that when you see every promotional thing, it looks like her costume.
Yeah, so I'm keeping an open mind about it. But so far, I don't see what they've shown of Starfire and go, oh, that's a fantastic recreation or whatever. So, yeah, I've always loved the whole Robin, Nightwing, Batman dynamic, and I think there's a lot of potential drama there that I'm looking forward to seeing them explore. I hope they do. I've always loved Raven. She's one of my favorite characters from.
I'm not completely sold on their version of Raven. I wish they.
I'm not either, but again, I'm going to give it a chance for sure.
Well, also the way I look at it is, my problem was mostly the age that they're starting with. But now that when I started thinking about it later, I'm like, well, if the show is successful enough, within 5 seasons, she's going to be a full adult anyway. So I mean, she'll grow into the role. But that's the thing, is I like the Raven, the Marv Wolfman version, or George Perez. Was it Marv Wolfman? Yeah, he wrote it. George Perez drew it, right? Or was it the other way around?
That's correct. Marv Wolfman.
Okay. Yeah, when they relaunched as the new Teen Titans, because that Raven was the first time she ever appeared, and I can understand them getting rid of her wearing high heels. That's kind of impractical out in the combat zone. But but in general, that older sort of exotic Eastern type Raven, the daughter of Trigon, that was the version, and she manipulate people with their empathy, and but I can see her growing into the role, like I said. So I think she's 14 or something like that. So 5 years she'll be 19. So I guess she'll become, if the show lasts. What do you think of? Well, okay. Here's my thoughts too on that. Everybody's complaining about Starfire's costume. They're not complaining about her. Being a African American actress, that because when she uses her powers, her orange skin shows, and I'm thinking it's a disguise, and it comes out when she's using her powers, and they have to keep for budget and makeup and all that. But the costume, my thoughts are that if Robin's costume is going to change when he becomes Nightwing, which either will happen at the beginning of season 2 or might even happen in the middle of season 1, we don't know, then maybe it's a progression, like she'll get a proper costume by the end of the season. Because they are supposed to be bringing Donna Troy in later, too, which I'm excited about because she's never been portrayed in live action. Except
That's
for
right.
the version that Deborah Winger played.
Yeah.
Which wasn't quite Donna Troy, but it was kind of like Donna Troy.
I enjoyed it when it happened, but it certainly wasn't,
She was a Wonder Girl, but she wasn't Donna Troy.
Correct.
That's probably fair to say. Well, even the costume was sort of accurate. So, I mean, yeah, pretty close. But Donna Troy as a character has not been portrayed on the big screen. I'm really hoping that they cast her well because they did a perfect job with casting Dick Grayson. I mean, this actor looks perfect. He sounds like him. He looks like him. I mean, at least they got the lead down. What do you think of him?
I think he looks great so far. And I think Beast Boy looks great so far.
I like the fact they're sticking with the green when he transforms, and that at first I was worried that he was only going to have green. That it was. Remember how Martian Manhunter, to save makeup on Smallville, he always they do this on Supergirl too, but he appears at least in his green skin form more often on Supergirl than he did on Smallville. You saw like one glimpse of it when he was getting thrown by Dr. Fate through a portal, and I was thinking because they're kind of doing that with Starfire with the saving on the orange makeup, but when it comes to Beast Boy, I'm like, the whole point of what he went through was he had to deal with having the green skin all the time, and it became a thing where he was. I don't know if they're going to go along with that backstory where he did that science fiction Star Trek like show with his family, or before they, when he was a kid and became a child star or whatever, because the green made it look like an alien, so they used him like, hey, this is perfect. We don't even have to put makeup on you. But at least the animal forms are green. I don't recall. I've only seen that clip a couple times. If the CGI worked for the animals, like, what do you think of that? They do have a bigger budget.
Yeah, I mean, again, without seeing it in the context of the story, it's really hard to tell because I'm willing to be flexible about the CGI as long as the story's enough to carry it. But I've seen plenty of things where the CGI is great, but the story is awful. So that that wouldn't work for me. So
they're supposed to have a really big budget for this show too. So I'm thinking they could. I mean, if they're not going to spend a lot of it on his CGI and Starfire CGI, I don't know if it's for costumes or sets, but their budget's supposed to rival that of Game of Thrones. From what I don't know if that's accurate, but it's up there.
That's $10 million an episode. So
no, you're okay. So I doubt it's that much.
Doubt it's that much. I mean, that's how much.
I think I heard it was like $1 million.
Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah,
it's got to be more than $1 million because $1 million is not anything these days.
Yeah, that's true
for a big network show. So, but it is a small network. So I don't know. I will have to check that out to see what they're spending.
And the other thing too is that they're spinning. Of course, they're spinning this off. And this leads into the next part of the same general topic, because it was announced that Brendan Fraser is coming back to play the voice of Robot Man, who's a character from the Doom Patrol. And I always loved the Doom Patrol, and I loved that backstory with Beast Boy when we found out what happened to them and the tragedy, and then they found Cliff Steele, and he was still alive in this water, and they want to get revenge on what happened to the Doom Patrol. I remember that storyline. And the Doom Patrol. In the comics, I mean, depending on which version, but in the version we're talking about, where the same new Teen Titans George Perez thing, the Doom Patrol ended up, sacrificing themselves to save people by letting themselves get blown up on an island, and then Robot Man was the only survivor, and of course Beast Boy was too because he was a member. And his adoptive parents were the leaders of the Doom Patrol. Do you think now, if they're spinning it off, it sounds to me like obviously they could kill off the characters in the same type of a story and just have the new Doom Patrol with Robot Man being the only one left over. What do you think they're going to do with that? Do you think they're going to end up recreating that story, or they're going to not go there with that particular version?
I don't know. I mean, if it was me, I would not foreclose on the potential that the Doom Patrol could take off and spin off into its own series. So who knows? I mean, they may find a way to retain the tragic part of it and have them maybe rebuild the Doom Patrol, or I don't know. I just don't know that they're gonna just kill them all out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, because Okay, here I just realized something. This is just a guess I'm going to make. I think they are going to do the storyline where they die, having already happened. And the reason why is I just remembered something I heard about the synopsis of their first appearance on Titans. Is an episode called The Doom Patrol. It's episode 13, and it has to go, obviously goes into Beast Boy's backstory. And my thought is that if they do it the way I think they're going to do it, maybe I could be wrong too. He comes from that tragedy, and then they find Robot Man, and then a new Doom Patrol gets built for by the time of the spin-off series, so that he says, "I'm going to go off and rebuild the Doom Patrol" at the end of that episode, where they're getting revenge on what happened to Gar's parents. So they could still recreate that entire storyline and have him going off to recruit a new team, and then when we see the first episode of the Doom Patrol series, he's been rebuilding and recruiting. Sort of like the way they're getting a team together on the Titans, so it sort of spins off of that. And having met Robot Man, and he goes off to do that. I don't know. I think that could work. I think
it could.
We'll see. I haven't heard anything about anybody casting, unless they're doing it as flashbacks, anybody cast as Elastigirl or Negative Man or any of those other ones. So, I mean, and they're making all these plans for Doom Patrol, so I guess we'll have to see what characters they say they're casting. Because
I think they have someone cast for the Chief.
Larry Trainer. Oh no, that's Negative Man.
No, I think
the Chief was the guy in the wheelchair.
Brosnan. Yeah. I'm thinking.
Really?
Is it Pierce Brosnan?
I haven't heard that. I'll have to check it in a little bit. That's interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye. Well, that's coming out soon, right? October 9th, maybe, or
Flash is coming out. Yeah, but I don't remember when that is.
I know it's in October.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
it's coming
not Pierce Brosnan. It's Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton is.
Oh, really? He's done a lot of things lately. He's done he would be good. Now I'm picturing him from Penny Dreadful with the beard, and yeah, I can see that.
And Alan Tudyk is Mr. Nobody.
Really?
And
that's good casting right there.
Yeah, and apparently they have cast someone to play Cyborg in Doom Patrol, named Joyvan Wade.
So they're going to allow a Cyborg to be on the small screen and the big screen the way they're doing Superman right now. Interesting.
And Flash, and
Oh yeah, that's true.
That's the way, and presumably Wonder Woman at some point.
Well, if Dawn Troy comes on the show, well, they did verify she is coming. They're looking for her. They're casting her. So obviously she's going to become the Wonder Woman TV representative, and hopefully they'll actually have a Wonder Woman that they can have come on as a guest star. The same way they're going to do with Batman, I'm sure.
But it won't be any of the movie people.
Oh no, I never said it would be.
They can't afford that. But they have cast April Bowlby in as Elasti-Woman, and
all right.
Yeah, so they've done some casting already on it that they started announcing this summer.
Awesome. So we were just talking about the CW, not CW, the DC Universe streaming shows, all the previews they've been showing for Beast Boy and all the stuff, more things for the Titans and the Doom Patrol rumors about how the way they're spinning it off. You have any thoughts about what you saw of Beast Boy and any of the new things they've been showing before we change subjects?
I'll be honest, I really haven't seen anything.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
I haven't.
All right.
Well, it's worth checking out. When does it premiere?
Let me find out. Hold on. Talk amongst yourself. I'll check real quick.
Son, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Trying to wake up.
I had a funny feeling that was what it was.
Yeah, when you're dealing with like one pain after another, you just take medicine and go to sleep. Okay,
it'll be DC Universe launches on Saturday, September 15th, but the Titans premieres on Friday, October 12th. And it consists of 12 episodes. Well, that's odd because they said episode 13 was the one. Maybe I'm thinking episode 7, Doom Patrol. But so yeah, that's not too far away. A couple of weeks almost. Not even a week and a half.
Yeah, October's the big month for premieres.
And it's my birthday tomorrow.
I will say that I am looking forward to the reactions of the first couple of episodes of Titans. Because just the sheer amount of bullshit that's come out from everybody about just the casting choices and stuff.
I don't have a problem with the casting choices, but one of the things Carlos and I did agree on is Starfire's costume needs to change because they said it's supposed to. The producer said it's not her permanent costume. That it's just there's a context to her wearing it in the first episode. The problem is the promotional material everywhere suggests that is her seasonal costume, that she keeps wearing it. So hopefully it'll change. The same way we all know Robin's going to change into Nightwing. So they're going to transform throughout the show. Hopefully.
Well, I mean, this is supposed to be. I mean, this is them forming the team, them not having the team already established.
Correct.
Right.
Not only that, but Jason Todd in the clips one of the clips that the new things was him meeting Nightwing or Robin and saying he's a new Robin, and then he says, yeah, and I drove the Batmobile here, and he goes, he lets you drive the Batmobile? He goes, yeah. He never let me drive the Batmobile. So that was kind of cool. But from what I heard, they are going there with him. He's probably going to get Joker-fied with the bat, and then he's going to end up becoming the Red Hood. They seem to be implying that storyline is going to be happening. You're going to see it start with getting to meet him as the new Robin, and then stuff's going to happen, and you know how this ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool if they bring in Damian Wayne later, though. He replaces him, and just like he does in the most versions. And then you got Batman's Son Syndrome in live action. That'd be kind of neat. I will say this: I do like the way they're doing Beast Boy's costume, because at least the color scheme is correct for his original jumpsuit. And doing it as a leather jacket, I don't have a problem with that at all. He's also
I think when I saw the Beast Boy trailer, I thought they got him nailed pretty well.
Yeah, and they do the CGI green animal transformations, and he turns naked for whatever reason in one scene. I don't know if he needs to be naked every time, or if the costume, like something technology-wise, he gets access to so that they can make it transform with him later or something. I don't know. Should be interesting. Should be funny. So, and like I said, and Brendan Fraser coming back to voice the Robot Man from the Doom Patrols. He's been out of Hollywood for a while. He's had a lot of personal problems. It was a heartbreaking story when I remember reading about it. But what do you think of that? Just Brendan Fraser being the voice. Can you picture that?
Yeah, I totally can. I've always been a big Brendan Fraser fan.
Yeah, me too.
He's from Seattle, and I'm from here, so he's kind of a native son. So
I did actually meet
him
back when he did that school. What was the bullying movie he did? School
Ties. Whoa, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I met him. He came to when I was working in a retail store in Kittery, Maine. He was visiting the area, and he came in and he gave me his autograph and everything. That was the only thing he was in at the time, but I knew who he was.
Yeah, he's done some really great work. So he's certainly talented enough to pull something like this off.
And I guess they're going to show him as Cliff Steele in the flashbacks too, so we'll get to physically see him also.
Right.
All right. Well,
the only thing I can say is you say Brendan Fraser, and the only guy I'm thinking of is the dude who played George in George of the Jungle.
That's true. That was
trust me, that movie in the song. Believe me, everywhere at the time it came out, wherever I was working or I never heard the end of it because I couldn't.
No, but that's because I'm pretty sure he was George in that movie, was he not?
Yes, he was, but that's the thing.
I only know this guy from comedy stuff. I don't think I've ever really seen him in anything serious.
Oh, he was in Gods and Monsters. He's great in that. That's with Ian McKellen. It's based on sort of on a true story. That movie actually got some Oscar nominations, if I remember correctly. So he's very good at dramatic roles. He just got into this thing where they were just paying him oodles of money to do these silly comedies, and they just kept getting sillier and sillier, and he sort of became less relevant as time went by. And then he had an uptick in his career doing the Mummy movies, which I didn't really care for, but
I love those movies. I didn't like the last
of those.
I liked the first two, but after that it was like, all right, that's enough. But yeah, he was good in those, and he was funny also in the Bedazzled with Elizabeth Hurley. That's an underrated movie. I thought
didn't see it. Didn't see it.
Another thing that has freaked me out is I just recently saw bits and pieces of the Yogi Bear movie, and I'm like,
oh, I haven't seen that one, but
what the hell, H.R. Wells? Why are you in a comedy?
Oh, is that the guy?
Oh, is that the sort of the
Harrison Wells from The Flash is
right.
the park ranger in the Yogi Bear movie.
Oh, Tom Cavanaugh, yeah.
What?
Oh, I can actually see that. That movie had no interest for me whatsoever.
See, speaking of The Flash, I can't wait. It's coming out, I think, October 9th. That's the premiere. Son, where are you on that anyways?
I am in the middle of the episode where Grodd attacks Central City.
Oh, that's a good two-parter. Yeah, so, and Son always told me that she doesn't care about spoilers because this is going to be a big season with Barry and Iris's daughter being a big part of it. And in Excess, that's her name, Excess. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they handle this because they picked the perfect actress for that.
George, we actually came up with the theory of all of the main speedster villains of The Flash, didn't we?
We did?
The Unified Speed Force theory?
No, no, that each main villain that Barry has a villain in The Flash can be equated to a Star Trek villain of some description.
Yeah, I remember this. Zoom was a Klingon.
Zoom is obviously Klingon because he was really all about brute forcing everything. Thawne in the beginning was a Romulan because his whole thing was making sure everything was planned out and being in the shadows of everything, making sure everybody thought they came to their own conclusions first.
What was Savitar? I forget.
Savitar is literally a paw wraith because he's working through everything else but himself, except when he has to step in, and even then, he's kind of using mediators in the go-between.
Yeah, that might work. Actually, the Thinker, when you get to him, is kind of Borgish in a way because he's assimilating people in a way. So, wow, that works too. Yeah, you haven't seen the Thinker yet. He's an interesting villain, and he's not a speedster.
I look forward to it.
You also get to meet the Elongated Man, a Justice League member, and they do awesome with his stretch powers. So that's gonna
I actually like him a lot. I'm not as big a fan of the Thinker, but I love Elongated Man. They
picked the perfect actor. He looks like Ralph Dibny.
Yeah, he really does.
Because they gave Ralph Dibny that certain sort of kind of noir, like exaggerated detective nose and everything in the drawings in the comics, and he has that. It's kind of interesting. And I like that joke he made where he wants to call himself Plastic Man. That cracked me up.
Yeah, that was funny. Did you notice, by the way, in the Titans trailer that you see Hawk and Dove in it?
Yes. I look forward to seeing them too, yeah. I forgot about them.
I do too.
Yeah, they look good.
I think they're some of the most neglected heroes in the DC universe, and I always liked them.
Yeah.
They never did a great job sort of explaining exactly what their powers were, which I thought was a shame, because they always tried to play up the whole, peace guy, violence guy versus violence guy, and so it was just never clear. What do they do? What's the point of them? So hopefully,
originally there was a male, female Hawk and Dove, and then it passed on to a female. Like the whatever.
No, it was originally male.
That's what I said.
Yeah, no, you said female male.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but then it passed on to you're right.
Yeah, and then later on, I can't remember if it's ambulance or just something that they use that passes on to someone else, but whatever it is that they do.
But they never really explained what it is they do. Why are they here? And I just always thought that was a shame because it was a great concept. I just don't think they ever truly delivered on it.
There are so many great characters that they can use for this show, and with only 12 episodes in the season, they're gonna either have to have a lot of seasons to tell a lot of good stories, or they're gonna have to have more than one arc happening at the same time. I don't know, because I know they're doing Brother Blood as the big arc for this first season. So maybe next year, we'll get into things like Starfire's sister, Commandar, I think is how you pronounce her name, because it's supposed to sound like Commander.
Right.
Blackfire, and stuff like in her Temerian, and the aliens, the warlords here from Akunda.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to commit this early till they see how it does. But
yeah,
and I imagine what I'm hoping they don't fall into, the trap they don't fall into, is the trap that the Flash has fallen into, in which they basically, it's the same thing, but insert new villain here.
Right.
And
it's another speedster, just insert new name.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping that they change it up, that they give each season its own sort of arc, so that it doesn't just replicate the arc of the last season, because that's unfortunately what really started to happen with the Flash, and it just ends up making it feel tired.
It makes it feel a little Buffy-like, where it's the villain of the week, but it's, instead of the villain of the week, it's the villain of the season. But they have a lot of speedsters to check off. That's probably what they're doing now. I mean, and people like seeing those villains. But with the Titans, I did hear what I kept hearing in the interviews was they treating each episode like a movie. Each is sort of like Game of Thrones. They kind of gave that comparison. It's going to be a little dark, but they said it's going to be each episode isn't just like a short story like the regular CW shows. It's like almost like each one is its own movie. So I guess you theoretically could tell a lot of stories in 13, 12 episodes if each episode themselves is more than an hour. I don't know if they actually said that, but it's probably just an hour.
Yeah, I don't see it being longer than that.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out. At least the first episode's free, so that'll help. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be pirating it, but I mean, it's one of those. Everybody's getting into the streaming thing now, and that's just the way of the future, unfortunately. Overall, it's cheaper than cable, like people keep pointing out, like Terry Lynn. If you look at how much you spend at the end of each year, and you paid for cable every month, you're actually saving money, because you're being more able to, instead of paying for 100 channels you don't watch, you're being more in control of it, and you can unsubscribe.
That's the theory, but I don't think it's going to turn out that way. Everything I've been reading about where things are heading is you're going to end up spending to get everything that you want. You're going to end up spending about as much as you were spending on cable, and you won't have another 100 channels. So this is really, from an economic standpoint, not really the best way to go. I mean, it's great to have these niche streaming services, that's great, but if you watch a lot of television in a lot of different niches, those charges are all going to add up, and pretty soon they're going to hit cable levels in terms of what the cost is, and so
unless
people
they package them. Remember how Amazon was working with whoever?
Amazon is packaging it only in terms of presentation. You're still paying extra for each
that's
service.
true.
So you can get CBS All Access through it, but you still have to pay the monthly fee. So
so you pay like really, Amazon Prime, and then you're paying but you're not paying quite as much as you would if you just had All Access, but it still adds to what you're paying on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I think they charge the same as regular CBS.
Yeah, you might be right. I think it was like another $5 at least, which is the cheapest option on CBS All Access.
But this is the argument I made back when all of the big gaming companies were splitting off from partnering with Steam to build their own Steam-like platform for their games. It's the same concept, just applied to television. It's all of these companies going, hey, we can pull money directly from people instead of them watching stuff for free on network television, or by paying a cable subscription service that takes that shaves a little off the top and then gives it to the company. We can do it directly to them. Well, people are going to go to your service, find out there's not much there, and they're going to maybe binge watch a thing or two, a show for a month or two, and then they're going to leave, and then you're going to be left holding this really huge debt you've created in creating a streaming service when you had Netflix the whole damn time. Well, so you're going to wind up destroying yourself.
I actually agree with you, son, on that one. I think people have always said, "Oh, I hate paying for hundreds of channels I never use," but what you don't understand is everyone has their own set of channels that they watch, and because you're spreading a lot of these costs around amongst multiple networks, everybody gets some. I mean, what's made the cable business model work is that because you're guaranteed a certain amount of money every month from subscribers, you have a ceiling to or rather a floor to your earnings. And so everything that you make on top of that, and USA Network is a classic example of this, they produce a lot of original content because they know that even if a show fails, they'll always, they are guaranteed to make their share of, of the cable subscription fees. And, broadcast networks don't have that kind of guarantee, and streaming services won't have that kind of guarantee because
Sci-Fi Channel kind of has that same pattern too.
Sci-Fi Channel's on cable, so
that's true. Oh yeah, that's true.
So I think everyone who's complaining about paying for all these extra channels they don't see, they're going to end up regretting their criticism because. For exactly the reasons that Sun brings out, is that, yes, you can now do your a la carte choosing of networks or streaming services, but you're going to see everything you want to see. You now have to pay for each one, and you're going to end up paying as much as you did for cable. And I also think that you're right that the demand you're creating, or you need to be able to sustain for people to stick around on an ongoing basis for your new streaming. I mean, that's the issue I have with DC Universe. It's like, I love the DC Universe. I grew up reading DC Comics. But is it really enough for a monthly fee for every month after another month after another month? Like, I don't know that that's the case, honestly, and I think you're going to see that at least at the beginning with all of these. You start, if Netflix had started that way, it would not have become what it's become. The reason that it did is because it started out with other people's content, and as people got accustomed to paying their monthly subscription, then they started building their own content, and now they're just like HBO. And HBO started this way as well, and Showtime. They all started really grabbing people by giving them early access to films that had come out, and as they got bigger, they started creating their own content. And now a lot of people, that's the primary reason why they subscribe to HBO, is for HBO's original content. Like, I rarely watch a movie on HBO because I've usually already seen it somewhere, but I subscribe for the series, for Game of Thrones, for all of them.
Hashtag bring back Carnival.
By the way, you just reminded me of Carlos, when Game of Thrones next season starts, since I know you watch it now, it's the final season. We got to be talking about that when that happens.
Definitely. That'll be a fun several weeks.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, this is the reason. But this is the reason I really dislike Dish Network as a service, because they chop up their little programming packages to serve you on a platter, and at the same time, yeah, sure, the costs are cheaper for getting this package or that package, but you're going to have to bundle several of them together.
Exactly.
Question: Did you ever finish Iron Fist, Carlos?
I have not finished yet. I've made it another 2 episodes since we last talked, but I've just been super busy, so I'm behind on a lot of things.
Well, what episode do you want? If you can even remember which one.
I think I'm on episode 5.
I remember you were on 4 the last time I talked to you. I think you were on 4 last time.
Then it's 6 because I watched another 2.
Okay, so you're about halfway through. What do you think of it so far?
Well, I'm still sticking with it. So, and they certainly improved some of the things that bothered me about the first season. So, I'll end up watching the whole thing. I mean, I even watched Defenders all the way through. It took me a few tries, but
and son, I know that you were struggling to get through the first episode. And I asked you to watch the next one and a couple more just to give it a chance.
I stopped halfway through 5 because it just wasn't interested in the amount of stupid anymore.
I loved it, especially by the end. But I was compared especially to the first Iron Fist season. But I just liked the character development, and there was a lot, especially the final episode. But I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything. But when you finally get there, Carlos, yeah, we'll talk. We'll do we'll do a recap review. But don't rush. When you eventually get there.
Sure, I'll try
it is worth it
to get to it. I'm about to leave on several weeks of travel, so I've got time on planes, trains, and automobiles to to catch up.
Okay. Well, so they dropped the. They finally. I thought they stopped. I thought when Marvel was buying or Disney was buying the rights from Fox, I thought that they had announced that they were canceling production on Dark Phoenix. Apparently, they finished it, and it's got a trailer out that dropped the other day. Stars Game of Thrones. The girl, she plays Sansa Stark on Game of Thrones as Jean Grey. I can't remember Sophie. No, what's the actress's name?
And the funny thing is,
Sophie Turner, I think.
Yeah.
The fans already took that trailer, took stuff from the other one where she's a Phoenix, and
I've seen that mashup too.
Just utterly destroyed the Dark Phoenix because it's a rehash and it's stupid.
Well, I mean, I don't think you can assume that. I think that it was convenient to mash the two together because the first one was so awful. Excuse me, and I think this one is much more likely to be not awful. But the jury's out. The studio has delayed its premiere by several months, and that usually does not indicates some trouble with a production when that happens.
Could it have been though because of how long it took for them to negotiate buying out the Fox rights and competing
against?
It shouldn't have because the production would have been grandfathered in.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, production was well on its way, so I don't think it has anything to do with the corporate shuffles going on with rights because it was already well into production at the time. So usually when something like this happens, and I don't have any reason to believe that this is what's happening, but usually when there are delays like that, you saw it with Fantastic Four, you saw it with what was that one, the zombie one that Brad Pitt produced?
Zombie Nation.
Yeah.
So, Z Nation.
No, isn't that the TV series? Anyway, whichever one.
You know which one? Yeah,
it was a huge thing, and they basically kicked out the director, brought in a new one, brought in a new writer, reshot more than half of it. And apparently, I don't like zombies, so I haven't seen it. But apparently, from the reviews, a lot of that worked. It was way better than anyone expected it to be because of it. And I don't think that in this case, that it's in as bad a shape as that movie was at that point. But it's usually not a good thing if it's being moved forward.
It's entirely possible that they had to fire the editor because the editor was a drunkard and wasn't editing the film the way they were supposed to.
Well,
it could be anything like that.
I don't get as nervous about that because I remember Rogue One, they practically redid the second half of the movie because they didn't like the Gareth Edwards his third act, I guess. So they deconstructed it and reconstructed it.
I'm guessing it was the second act. That's usually where movies run.
I heard third act, but
trouble.
You could be right.
We'll see. Anyway, there are reports of reshoots on this movie, so that usually means that something didn't work the first time. But again, lots of movies get reshoots, but they don't necessarily get delayed. It was supposed to be coming out in February, and now it's been moved to June. But that's also summer blockbuster season, so maybe it's an indication that it will be better. Who knows? But it's certainly a thing to wonder about.
But based on we've talked about the delays and the production and the worry. But what did you think about the trailer? I mean, as far as, do you think it looks good, or do you think are you not? Is it not? Is it a case of where it looks good, but some of the other X-Men movies that look good didn't turn out so great? What do you think?
I have generally liked the X-Men movies. Last Stand, I didn't. I mean, I thought it looked great. I was glad they included the characters they did, but I think it just fell apart.
Days of Future Past was its own weight. I love Days of Future Past. I thought it was epic, but the Last Stand wasn't quite what it looked like it was going to be.
Days of Future Past, I really liked. Apocalypse, it appealed to me as a comic book fan, but if I weren't a comic book fan and I was just watching it as a movie, I think it was a lot weaker from that perspective. This one I hope comes somewhere in the middle where, the Dark Phoenix story is such a great story, and if they're just true to that and don't let the fact they have so much money to play with, spin it off into some of the wrong directions, then I am hopeful. I mean, I've wanted to see a Dark Phoenix movie since I was.
Can you imagine if the MCU
18.
had the property already and what they would have done with the Dark Phoenix story? It would have been like Infinity War for the X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been. I think, the problem with, I sort of see it as having the same problem that the Superman movies, the DC universe, cinematic universe movies it had, because they were under the thumb of, what's his name? We've talked about him before, and I can't stand him. The director, Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And similarly with this one, so much of it was the vision of one guy, and now he's off of it, and hopefully that freed up Bryan Singer is who I'm thinking of, by the way. Hopefully that frees the property up creatively to do things that I liked a lot of what Bryan Singer did. Sometimes he would spin off into these weird directions that I don't think were true to this. I'm not a big one for, it has to be exactly like it was in the comics, but it has to still be a strong storyline. And some of his choices, I think, veered away from the strength of the storyline. I love the costumes in this one.
They look like the same style they're doing what they do with Deadpool too.
Yeah, well, there's the whole, was it Grant Morrison did in Uncanny X-Men back in the early 2000s.
These definitely are costumes I've seen in the comics before. They're one of the variations.
And I think it works. I wasn't sure that it would. So when I saw the trailer, I was like, this actually works. So
I found that when superhero movies started coming back, but they didn't get as big until the Marvel movies, that every time they try to interpret, like for example, why not be bold? I've seen we've talked about Bat in the Sun when they do their versus things. When they did like things with Wolverine, like when he fights Wonder Woman, his yellow costume actually looks good if you actually do a good job making the costume. It doesn't look silly on the screen.
I totally disagree. I've not seen that yellow costume. Does not work on film. It just doesn't. A lot of those.
Well, okay, you can do the brown version of it or something else, but they always want to make everybody wear leather jumpsuits, because they don't want them to look like superheroes. Really look like superheroes in the old days.
I just don't think grown ass people would wear things that are in that bright colors. Again, it works in comics. People are used to seeing that, but on the screen it looks outlandish. So I've never had a problem with the toned down color scheme of the costumes, and I would probably have had a problem with a slavish devotion to the color scheme from the comics.
My only concern about, it's not really a concern, it's more like apprehension. I guess it's the same thing. That when the Dark Phoenix story requires, it's the tragicness of the fact that they had to, and she knew it, they had to kill her in order to protect the world, the universe from the Dark Phoenix, the Phoenix Force. The problem is that I don't know if I'm sold enough on the Scott, Jean, Wolverine. They should have built up that triangle better, or have it come back. And Wolverine's not even in this movie, so at least I don't think he is. So that's going to change a lot of the original power and impact that the original death of her in the comics had, because the tragedy was that both Wolverine and Cyclops loved her, and she was in that love triangle, and they both knew that they had to sacrifice her in order to, and three people suffered, and not just the team, but it's not gonna. I don't know if they're gonna be able to pull it off quite the same for those reasons, because they had that Cyclops romance built with her a little bit in that last one, but I don't know if I feel like
it was super early. You really didn't see them. You saw them.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's earned that level yet to do this particular story. But at the same time, I understand why they wanted to go big and do the next big story. Days of Future Past was one of the most Days of Future Past was one of the most to this day, celebrated comic stories for the X-Men, and they used that, and that worked. So they went. So I know they in their heads they were thinking, what's the next big one we can use? Dark Phoenix and an Apocalypse. And so they're just grabbing all the big ones to get bigger and have something big to show on the big screen that were from the actual comics. I just feel like this version of the X-Men team and the dynamics going on with them I don't think it earns the Dark Phoenix story to be done properly. But I could be surprised.
Well, they could do it. The question is, do they? And I share with you the trepidation around that, because if they don't sell that, it loses a lot of its dramatic heft. So yes. What I have seen, though, and what I think they have done a better job of, is the Beast and Mystique.
And Nightcrawler.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they've done enough with Nightcrawler, but Nightcrawler is one of my favorites.
He looks pretty active in this one, though. At least the trailers suggest it.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I just have always loved that character.
I have too.
They have a lot of things they have to build up properly. I mean, the whole friendship between Storm and Jean Grey is that's another critical relationship that's part of the tragedy of the Dark Phoenix story. And I've always felt like Storm has been criminally underused as well. They show a lot of CGI stuff around her, but who is she really? And the comics always did such a great job of helping you understand who she was and her struggles, and what's it like being worshipped as a goddess and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot they have to build up. I hope they do it.
I'm looking forward to the day that they can do Black Panther marrying Storm and doing that story. That could be interesting later on down the road, now that they get the rights back.
Maybe. I don't know.
But it may not work. You're right. It may not work in this version.
Yeah, you have to remember is they're never going to be able to do all the comic stories. They're just not, right, because these
But they were a good power couple.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wasn't that sold on it, but it just seemed a little too obvious a thing to do. But I didn't hate it, but it wasn't enough to really make me.
Well, she was from Africa. It wasn't just this for the sake of the ethnicity. She was an African, worshipped like a god. And even though they had a lot more in common than just the color of the skin and things like that. There was
that's what I'm talking about. But I don't know. I just I didn't think it was bad, but it didn't really sell me either. It's just.
Oh, I didn't think you were talking about that. I'm just saying. I think a lot of people might think that they only put them together because of those conveniences, but they did have a tribal African background together that kind of worked its way into the storyline. But that was coming off the heels of Civil War, and that was a whole that whole history of build up for the two of them in the comics was a lot different. It may not work in this MCU that they have going on. So you could be right about that. And by the time they get her to the screen, we may not even have the same guy playing Black Panther by then, because it could be years and years from now.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, yeah. So the Marvel universe, cinematic universe, has everyone thinks it's great. It is great, but when it enters the phase where the original actors start to phase out and they have to replace them or find different stories that don't use them or whatever, there's always a danger that when you go from the A team to the B team, that viewers won't stick with you. So they've got some challenges coming up. They're riding high on the hog right now, but they will have their creative and marketing challenges happening within the next 5 years.
I kind of think that's why they wanted the properties back from Fox, because this gives them something later to. They've already got a fan base built up with the X-Men from Fox, and if they could do their version of them and introduce them later, they've already established the credibility as far as how they handle the characters they do own. So if they own them and people already love the X-Men, then Fox has been inconsistent with how good the movies have been. Well, give it to them, and they've got a proven track record of almost 100 home runs, and who knows? Of course they're going to obviously recast everybody, I'm sure, but still, they haven't done a bad job with any of what they've done. Look at Spider-Man. They recast him, and he had just been on the screen with Andrew Garfield. So, but yet they found someone who, to me, is the best of all the Spider-Men. So when it comes to their casting, They seem to know what they're doing. So if they do cast, obviously a new Wolverine, a new Storm, a new Cyclops, Jean Grey, I'm pretty confident that it's going to work out.
Oh, I think it's going to work out. As long as Disney does not get it in their head to use the X-Men to remake Song of the South, they're going to be fine.
They're not going to do that. I mean, I think Disney, exercises sort of a very big picture kind of control over Marvel, but they trust what they bought. They bought it because it works. So they're not going to mess with that formula anytime soon, I don't think. But once the changes start to happen, you may see more of that kind of.
I mean, that's why they bought Star Wars. It works.
True. You
don't have to tell me how it's a lightsaber. It works.
True. There's a subject that I forgot to put in the show notes. It didn't copy over when I did that, but it suddenly remembered it, so I'm glad I did. So there's a Stage 9. There's a fan-made virtual reality tour of the Enterprise D that was getting ready to launch, and it was it's a virtual reality one, and CBS shut them down, cease and desist. Why don't you take the lead on this one, Carlos? You know all the details.
Sure. And if anyone doesn't know all the details, I cover a lot of them on Axe Monitor. If you go to
I'll link your article also.
Homepage, axemonitor.com, you'll see a story. It's actually, I got it from TrekSphere, so they gave me permission to reprint their article called, I retitled it, Why CBS Shut Down the Fan-Made Enterprise D 3D Simulation. So quick, backstory. Stage 9 is a fan project. Everyone works as a volunteer. They decided to use the Unreal game engine to create a walkthrough of the entire Prize D, from exterior to interior. It's taken some years, and it's been growing, and it's gotten and it's fans have grown. It's a very impressive piece of work. Of course, it's shut down now, but you can go onto YouTube and find lots of walkthroughs that people have posted on there. And they did a nice job. It's not a game; it's really just a simulation. Although, if you read some of the
within it, though.
Not really. They have activities you can do, but there's not a storyline.
Like you can do the phaser range and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can do a tractor beam, all that sort of stuff. But it's not really a game with it.
Yeah, okay, I'll agree with you there. Yeah, okay.
But they held out. One of the problems that they had was that they were asking people to donate to its development, not to really pay. I mean, there's some costs associated with it. I don't think it was ever intended to be a big revenue generating thing, but there was an ongoing effort to bring in money to develop this, even though they made it, offered it for free to people. Well, that's a problem when you're like CBS and you license, someone purchases a very expensive license, in this case Ubisoft, which last year released Bridge Commander, and there's a lot of similarities with them. I mean, Bridge Commander obviously has a storyline. It's a real game, but
what do you mean they just released Bridge Commander? That's an old game, or is this a new version of it?
No, this is a new game in 2017. It was just released.
A Bridge Crew is the game you're thinking of, Carl.
Yeah,
you're Bridge Crew. Sorry.
Because I still play Bridge Commander, but people rebuilt Bridge Commander from the ground up, and it's still going great. And but that's an older fans
right.
took it.
Yeah, sorry, I got that confused. Yes,
no problem. I know what you're talking about now. If I could afford Oculus Rift, I would be playing that game too. But right now,
Well, and for example, Stage 9's project was they were aiming to make it compatible with Oculus Rift and other virtual reality headsets. So this rang alarm bells, and it's reasonable to see why. And of course, the fandom, many people in the fandom are up in arms about this because they see it as similar to the Axonar thing, where they were, where fans were creating something that was too good to be to continue. And even though the quality thing is maybe in question with Axonar, certainly the quality with Stage 9 was was there. But of course, as a volunteer effort, it was also spotty. It didn't. They had some performance issues from time to time, and again, it didn't have a storyline.
They used likenesses too for the characters.
Well, yeah, I'm getting to that. That was another problem, is they used actors' likenesses in it, and that's also a real problem, because that both the licensing issue and the actors' images issue are things that CBS can't control. Like, they have to enforce those things.
Right.
With fan films, they've let people get away with it because they're it is the intellectual property solely of CBS, and it controls it, so they can afford to look the other way when it comes to fan films. They can't afford to look the other way when fans' efforts start to encroach on licenses, or the images of actors who they have management who they get paid for the use of their likenesses and their images. So people being able to put it out there and as a way to and again, they weren't making money, and that's fine. But the problem is the fact they keep saying that because it was free, that means it should be okay. But the problem is, because it was free made it an even bigger problem. Because if you can do this fun stuff for free, why are you going to pay for a licensed product? So being free presents its own problems.
That actually makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people are like, "Well, we're not doing it for profit, so it must be okay. We should be able to do it." But that's not really the issue. That actually is the core of the problem. So it's unfortunate, and I feel really bad for them, because
you're devaluing the need to pay for it if someone can do it for free.
Exactly. And again, CBS, Ubisoft paid a lot of money for that license, and CBS is obligated to protect that, because it's an exclusive license. So that was a problem, and that's why it happened. I mean, I think that's why it happened. It's most likely why it happened. And if you look at some of the things that the developers were talking about having it grow into eventually, they were talking about turning it into a game, and doing the virtual reality compatibility with Oculus Rift and HTC Vive. So now then you are directly encroaching on areas that licensees have paid to be able to do. So it is a shame, but I just don't see there was any other way around it.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I've been playing around with the Unity engine myself, and I know that the open source aspect of it, if they all got together, and I know why they chose Unity, because it allows for multi-platforming. As far as developers working on the games from different remote locations and working together in the same area, so they can all work together, and that's what's great about it. And once they get it made and built, and they have everything, all the source code and everything's all ready to go, from there, because it is an open source free thing, from there, other people can take the material and transform it into a game, like you're saying. Like they've got that as their basic platform, and then they can build from there and expand and change it around, and then other people could try to sell it, and it just creates all kinds of problems.
I have to admit though, I heard this same story from two different outlets, said two different ways, to make me think it was two different companies being shut down. And the only thought that went through my head is, man, CBS is really trying to get in front of this Captain Picard thing, aren't they? Because that was the only thing going through my head, was the Picard thing that they're working on, and the Enterprise, because both the stories were talking about the Enterprise bridge, and I'm like,
yeah, about a destroyed. I just honestly don't see a connection between the two.
No, but that was the only thing going through my head at the time. I didn't know any details whatsoever about this. I'm hearing about all of this stuff right now, and I'm like, I agree 100% with you, Carlos. That's another one of those things that can't stand, but without knowing any other information, it's like, man, they just really trying to get out ahead of the Picard thing, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see this as a threat to the Picard series in any way. Because I mean, other than using Patrick Stewart's image in the game, well, it's not really a game, but in the simulation, but that if it would have been that, just that, they potentially could have continued, but it was really the scope and the ever broadening scope of the project that I think raised some alarms. Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things we know from fan film histories is that CBS would often reach out to fan productions and say, change this, don't do that, kind of thing, if you want to avoid trouble. And yep. and up until Axanar, everyone was okay with that. They would do exactly as CBS asked. Axanar, of course, kind of ignored it, and we've seen what happened because of that. But I know that Rob Bryan, who's the project head for Stage 9, explains in a YouTube vlog that he posted, which you can access through the Axe Monitor article as well. And he explains that they tried really hard to reach out to CBS Legal and just say, tell us what we need to change. We'll change whatever you need to change. And CBS didn't give them a list. And I think the reason why is because everything they're doing was a problem. The very existence of this product as direct competition to licensed products, there's nothing you can fix that changes that. So that's how we end up where we are. And again, it's a shame because they obviously put a lot of love and hard work into this, but it just.
Do you think it'll end up getting released anyways? It's sort of on the underground, so to speak. People are going to try to.
It probably already is.
Probably, but I would expect it's not being done by the original developers,
right.
But by people who've downloaded I think they've had 10 versions or so that have come out. But the thing is that it's still not complete. There's still things that aren't working. Some areas of the ship apparently that they haven't finished yet. There are glitches, all of that. So it won't ever be complete. It isn't complete. And people, will probably privately share because they can. But I would be alarmed and surprised if the actual Stage 9 people were doing it, even under the table, because it just exposes them to way too much.
Right. I mean, so, they wouldn't use the official production company to do it. If they already have a release given out to people, depending on if the source code's in there. I mean, with Unity, someone could pick up the reins and try to get things moving along on their own without needing Stage 9's help with that. So who knows?
Well, it's not like you can just pick it. I mean, they had a lot of developers working on this, so it's not like just one dude could pick it up and keep doing it. I mean, it's for it. Yeah,
it reminds me of Skyrim when they had the free expansion that they made. That they actually got fans, like I think it was like over 100 developers all volunteered, but real game developers that were fans of the game and just people who knew how to code, and they all worked together in this massive effort. It sort of sounds like that. I don't know how many developers they had on this one, but
yeah, I don't recall the number, but it was it grown and continued to grow, and it's a very impressive product. It's a very impressive project that they did. As a product, it was not complete, and of course, in a commercial space, you can't release products that are works in progress, and so that's one of the other key differences about this. But there's commercial products have to go through very rigorous quality control before things are released, and you have to create support for the software, and that is very expensive. Whereas if it's free and people are volunteering, you can't expect to have ongoing support for anything that you get. So again, it's just it's a shame that it had to happen. But I think once Ubisoft released Bridge Crew, the writing was probably on the wall.
And speaking of Axanar, because it spins off this topic. You had an update about the something about the Axicon tickets that Alex slashed the prices.
Yes, I think we talked a little bit about Axicon, the convention for Axonar fans. It's going to be first weekend in November in Atlanta. Which, one of the problems with it was it was really expensive, and you had to, because it was sort of pitched as a convention within a convention, you had to pay two entry prices, one for the Honor Harrington, if you know what that is.
Yep.
Convention in Atlanta, and then an additional entry fee just to get into Axicon. You couldn't pay for just Axicon. The idea being that the Honor Harrington people were covering a lot of the overhead costs, and so people needed to contribute to those costs. But the problem was that it meant you were spending a minimum $91 once you factor in the ticket processing fees for this very small 3-day niche convention, and people weren't having it. They were complaining about it just being too much money.
Capitalism works.
Yeah. Well, so then what happened is, and again, we don't know for a fact that how sluggish sales were, just that they were, and that people were giving feedback to Axonar that it just wasn't. They couldn't see how they could pay that much money for so little in value, and and Alec Peters even announced that he was expecting thousands of dollars in losses.
I think he said 3,000.
No, it was minimum 5.
Oh, was it 5? Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it conceivably could even been higher, but so he ended up announcing a 40%, 41% cut in the cost of entry, the brunt of which is affecting the event's hosts, SphinxCon. So they're the ones who are kind of taking it in the shorts a little bit, because they're getting less money for holding up their end of the logistics and facilities for this convention. But apparently they agreed to that, and so the prices have come down, hopefully to a more reasonable level. We'll see.
Hopefully. Oh, and didn't you say, you mentioned to me that as far as that tardigrade lawsuit with CBS, the tardigrade issue lawsuit that's going on with CBS All Access and the independent game developer, they're going to be what is it? What are they doing with Netflix in the next couple days?
The answers from Netflix and CBS are due to the original legal complaint that started the lawsuit. And we don't know exactly how that's going to go. Some people are saying that it will be an answer that is also a motion to dismiss. We may see that, because, I think they're going to, it will be a strong indication of how seriously they take it, how much they're going to throw into this answer that they make. So for CBS, their answer is due October 2nd. And,
which is tomorrow, and it's my birthday, so I remember that date.
No, it's 2 days from now. Tomorrow is October 1st.
Well, actually, here it's October 2nd because it's after midnight.
Oh, that's true, because it's Sunday night. So yeah, October 2nd for CBS and October 3rd for Netflix. So Netflix will probably move for dismissal because they didn't have anything to do with the development of Star Trek Discovery other than helping pay for it. And it was as a licensing agreement, not necessarily as a production partner. Although we don't know for sure that that's the case, because we don't see those kinds of contracts. But my guess is Netflix is going to basically say, hey, it wasn't us, we weren't part of this, so take us out. And they may very well be successful in that, unless there's some language in the contract that trips them up. But CBS may just say, look, there's just not enough here for this to proceed, so let's dismiss this and move on with our lives. But the way motions to dismiss work is that the court has to sort of assume that all the assertions being made, assertions of fact, being made in the legal complaint are true, and so your basis for saying it should be dismissed has to be based purely on legal arguments. So in other words, because you're assuming the facts are true, you can't say, well, the facts that they're presenting is wrong, so that's why you should dismiss it. You have to say the way they're using the facts as if they were actually facts isn't legal. It doesn't meet the standards, the legal standards for copyright infringement. So we'll see how good their lawyers are at making either of those cases or both when they issue their answers. But we'll be covering it on Axe Monitor, and we'll have pretty comprehensive coverage on what they say and what it all means. So that'll be starting in a couple of days. And
I'll make sure to link that, and also we'll cover it here next time, of course, because there'll be something to talk about at that point when it comes to that subject for an update, and maybe other news when it comes to that too. You never know. Good stuff. Some weeks tons of stuff drops. Other weeks not as much. But there's always going forward. I mean, there's going to be tons to talk about. We've got so much coming up. All the CW shows are getting ready to start. There's going to be the crossover this winter. There's Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker coming out.
We also have the first of the short treks coming out this week on October 4th. So the second, third, and fourth will be very busy. So there's a lot going on, and the dark undercurrent here, of course, is that for a lot of fans, the ones who hate Discovery and hate CBS because of what they did to Axanar, all that, this is all fueling that fire. And so you're seeing a couple of the conspiracy theory people on YouTube who are really taking the Stage 9 thing pretty hard.
Yeah, I saw that one you told me about.
There's one guy who's sort of famous. His name is Doomcock, of all things, who actually he did a 3-hour YouTube post in which he cries. And
he reminded me of Francis, his son's friend. Not friend, but the guy who's always doing those WoW videos and freaking out,
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, so a lot of people are upset about it. So you're going to see that theme, cutting across a lot of these events between, Discovery's production, how it was developed, the short treks coming out, and more. So it'll be an interesting next couple of weeks.
Wait, George, did you just think that I have some kind of connection with Boogie?
No, I was just saying sarcastically, your friend, because you used to always like. He cracks you up. You were always sharing So I was just saying he's your friend, but in a jokey way. But no, this is what this guy reminds me of that Carlos is talking about, because I looked him up. He goes on rant and he gets emotional and he gets all whiny, and he reminds me of
90% of YouTubers.
Yeah, pretty much.
And people pay for this. That's the thing that astounds me, is they pay these people to do these things. So of course they're going to do 3-hour-long rants about about how mad or sad they are about something evil corporate people have done, because that's how they make their money.
Yep. Well,
speaking of YouTube and a whole bunch of stuff happening in October, tomorrow is the day the last Dr. Puppet comes out.
Aww.
Oh, I have watched all of those. Thank you for bringing that up, son, because I have just really enjoyed watching all of those in the past week since we started talking about Dr. Puppet.
They are adorable.
They really are. I'm just so impressed with the level of technique and detail that they've done. I've watched a lot of the behind the scenes videos, which if you haven't, you should watch those, because they're very instructive and adorable. And a lot of people who've worked on this, didn't even meet each other face to face for quite a while into the project.
There was a lot of that going on when you were doing your Hidden Frontiers days, right? You guys had remote people being cast that did scenes in front of a green screen, and were they send them in and you were able to work with them remotely sometimes? I thought I remember that being the thing.
Well, we didn't necessarily do it remotely. I mean, writers like me didn't live in Los Angeles. So that kind of work was done remotely. Our soundtracks, when we had original music, was done by people who weren't in Los Angeles either. But because it was shot on a green screen, it was very common for two actors to be acting apparently in the same room, but they weren't. They were shot at completely different times from different angles. So that's what we did. Was so there were some actors who rarely, if ever, met during the course of the except for the parties. We would meet at parties.
There are a lot of fan productions out there, but that was even in the earliest days of all this. But that they've been able to pull things off working together in a network like this without actually physically being there. Just like Son and I and our friends do with the audio things remotely. It's a little easier with audio, of course, but
Yeah.
But so I'm really looking forward to, like, when you get things like Dr. Puppet come out and it shows someone taking it to, I wouldn't even say it's the next level. It's a different level. It's like, old tech meets high tech, and it's just being creative. And if fans can come up with, you don't have to necessarily have super awesome technology to pull off something that, they do use the computers and everything with the stop motion, but sometimes low tech works too, and you can do it all with practical effects, and it's just about being clever.
But see, in some ways, this was, and I don't know necessarily legally if it was, but this is kind of CBS's stance from the beginning with Trek fan stuff. Do something like Dr. Puppet. Don't go out and ask for $1 million to make a TV show with Tim Russ and Walter Koenig and shit.
And you can do. I always used the Night of the Doctor, the one where Paul McGann regenerates in that mini episode, which led into the Day of the Doctor. I always use that as an example when we were doing Starfinder. Like 7 minutes, you can tell an amazing story in 7 minutes. It doesn't have to be a half hour, 45 minutes. If your story is tight enough and you write it the right way, you can have mini episodes that can tell a great story, and it doesn't have to. It can be short. Just got to tailor the story to make not have to be 2 hours long or require all these.
Well, it doesn't even have to tell a story. It just has to convey a sentiment. There's literally an episode of Dr. Puppet that is 1 minute and 12 seconds long that is just a Christmas carol being done between twinkling stars and
I remember that one.
The rock guitar of the 12th Doctor.
Yep. All right. Now, there isn't a heck of a lot else to talk about this week. That's all right though, because we come close to normal time.
We've gone an hour, if not.
Well, we've got more than that. But that's fine. You guys have any last thoughts on anything you want to bring up before we call it?
Yes, I have one last thing before we go.
What's that?
Remember to wake up Green Day tomorrow.
Green Day. I don't get it.
Wake me up when September ends.
Oh. Okay. Oh, you're right, Carl. My birthday's not tomorrow. My birthday's Tuesday. Because I'm thinking of the 1st because that's my payday, so I was looking forward to that for that reason. Never mind. I got myself all mixed up.
That's all right. It's been that kind of week. But yeah, for my part, I'm looking forward to a very busy week that will give us a lot to talk about next week as well. So yeah, I think we've got some great stuff to look forward to.
Yep, and I might be having to talk with a certain person next week before we do our show the day before that. We'll see if that happens. If it does, talk about that too. So that's a whole episode. But all right. I want to thank everyone for joining us this week, as usual. And so we'll have more to talk about, and there's a lot of stuff coming up, and we'll talk to you the next time.